Hey everyone, in today's video I'm going to be showing you my LEGO Sceptile MOC and giving you a detailed look of the build, including its features, posability, and some of the building techniques used. Like with all my other builds I've shared on this channel, I'll have a link in the description below for both the parts file and instructions. The total part count for this MOC is 394 pieces, and at the time of the recording of this video is estimated to cost around $60 to $65 Canadian. This does not include shipping or handling, and your final cost may vary. Sceptile was suggested by many of you, and I knew if I were to build it, I would need to do the other two Hoenn starter evolutions as well. I think out of the three, Sceptile is my favorite in terms of the games and anime, and I personally like this build more as well. During the design, I was struggling to see what part color to use in LEGO, since I would have liked to use the bright green color, which I think would have been the most accurate, but its part selection was very limited. I also looked at the lime green color, but there also weren't enough pieces available, so ultimately decided on using the regular green you see here. I do admit that it is a bit too dark compared to the official design, but it was the closest part color in LEGO with a wide enough part selection. Also, when I first posted this on my Instagram, many of you pointed out issues with the head, and also was not satisfied with how it came out, so I completely redesigned the head, and I have to say I'm much happier with it now. The rest of the build pretty much stayed the same, but I'm quite satisfied with the final look, and it just shows how important it is to capture the head, as it helps to bring the whole build together. Taking a look at the torso, the interior uses snot bricks like with all my other builds, and I used different curve slopes and wedges to try and capture its overall shaping, and I was even able to capture the red stripe it has across its belly. The torso tapers up around the shoulders, where it goes from being 3 studs wide to just 2 for the neck, and I want to make sure that the neck was long enough and narrow just like its official design. Due to the building technique used for the neck, it's fixed to the body, so there's no articulation there. Coming around to the back, I used these larger ball joint pieces in bright light orange to resemble its bulbs, and this probably wasn't the best color choice since they're supposed to be a lighter shade, but this was the closest match I could find and had the look that I wanted. Alternatively, you could use the blank yellow minifigure heads instead if this color bothers you. The rest of the back is covered with curved slopes, and I tried to smooth out the back of the neck as well, which I think transitions nicely to the head. For the head, its base is also fixed to the neck, so you aren't able to rotate it, and the overall posability is limited. I did try adding a joint in as I was redesigning the head, but with its complex shaping and narrow neck, I wasn't able to add one in, and most of the ones I used made the neck be in an awkward position. As mentioned earlier, the main reason for the redesign was that I wanted to better capture its facial details and the overall shaping of the head, which many of you guys pointed out as well. In the official design, the head is very triangular and has many sharp angles, so in this iteration, I made the head a bit wider with the use of a 4x3 wedge piece on top, and then used some hinge pieces to angle and bend these wedge plates towards the nose. Also, if you look at it from the top, the hinges and wedge plates are able to close the gaps around the center wedge piece perfectly, which was a nice surprise when I was building it. I think the mouth is one of the only things that I kept from both designs, and the previous design also did not have the red outline around the eyes, which made them look very plain and felt like something was missing. So part of the redesign, since the head was wider, I was able to find a way to include the red outline, which is just done with an inverted bracket piece, and I think it really helps complete the overall look of the face. The arms aren't too complicated here, but it did take some out of the box thinking to try and capture the look of the fingers and its leaf blades on its forearms due to the limited part selection. The arms have articulation at the shoulders, elbows, and partially at the fingers. You can rotate the entire arm forward and back, and up and down at the shoulders with a pretty good range of motion, since it uses an Exoforce hand piece, and this is the only non-green piece used for the arms. You're only able to bend or straighten the arms at the elbows, since it uses swivel hinge plates, and I say partially for the fingers, as you're only able to open and close the top 2 fingers since they're built in together. The bottom finger or thumb is fixed at this angle, since it uses the angled bar piece with the stud in green, which was first introduced in Transclear in some of the CMF series, and we have since gotten in more colors in the last few years. I really wanted to use these spike pieces in green for the leaf blades, and I do wish that they came in a bigger size, but I think it still captures the overall look quite well. Taking a look at the legs, it follows some of the same building techniques I've used in the past many times, but with some tweaks to try and capture its form and trying to see what will work with the parts available. There's articulation at the hips, ankles, and feet. The hips are attached with mixer style ball joints, so you can rotate the entire leg forward and back and splay them in and out with a pretty good range of motion. The ankles and feet are only able to rotate on one axis, and the ankles use ratcheted hinge plates since the added friction just help with the overall stability. You can kind of get it into a walking pose, but due to the weight of the tail, I don't think you're able to have it balanced or posed on just one of the legs. The tail is something I may revisit in the future if more parts become available, as I'm not too satisfied with the final look here. Since the tail is always depicted as a darker shade of green than the body, I knew that I could only use the dark green color in LEGO, and I tried my best to capture the look with the available parts in this color. It's built in 3 sections, and the only part of articulation is at the base of the tail, which is attached with the mixed-saw ball joint, so you can rotate it, but due to the weight it naturally falls down. It at least helps with the overall stability while it's standing. I usually try and add some articulation in the tail if it's built in sections, but I didn't here since it would have had too many large gaps, and I did try to add it in just to see how it would look, but I was even less satisfied with it, so I opted for the technique you see here since it was a bit more accurate at least. If you take a look at the official artwork, there are lines which section off the tail, which is why I figured to build it in 3 sections, and it's why I added the small gap in between to try and resemble that subtle detail. With the way I built the leaves on the tail, without that small gap, the tail looked a bit too short, and each of the sections would have looked blended together, which I didn't want either. You may also have noticed that the tail tapers down slightly with each section, and I would have liked to use some cone pieces for the end, but they either didn't exist in this color or were very expensive, so I tried my best to use relatively available and or cheaper parts where I could. Finally, for a sense of scale, this is how it looks compared to a minifigure. And as an added bonus, this is how it looks scaled up to the other 2 Hoenn starter evolutions. So that's pretty much it for this video. Let me know down in the comments below your thoughts on this MOC, as well as any suggestions for my next build, and I may just pick yours for a future video. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching.